My name's Alyssa, and I'm graduating from Eastlake High School, and I will be attending the University of Oregon.
I graduated from Tesla STEM High School.
I'm planning on majoring in business and marketing at Grand Canyon University.
I'm graduating from Eastlake High School.
My name's Caleb. I'm graduating from Eastlake High School, and I've been going to Timberlake since 5th grade.
I've been coming to Timberlake pretty much my whole life.
I've been at Timberlake since 1st grade. It has just been a lovely home away from home.
I was in foster care and I was a Buddhist, but my foster family was Christian. That's when I found Christ.
Freshman and sophomore year were really tough. I didn't really have any friends, and I've learned a lot about making connections in HSM.
I was really active in Cruise. I enjoyed coming every week. It was kind of a midweek debrief.
So on Wednesdays we go to a thing called Cruise.
Cruise is the youth groups that we have.
It's kind of like a low-key devotional time. You get to pop into a small group of just your grade.
When you're just around the community with people that love Jesus, it's just easier to put your love for Jesus out there.
The connections really help out. Getting to talk through challenges has really been helpful to me.
It kind of feels like people understand you because you're in the same group going through a lot of the same things. I would say favorite memory from HSM, just summer camps.
Every single camp and all coming together and worshiping together.
Probably my favorite was when we did worship nights instead of cruise, because I just felt like those nights I really got a lot closer to God.
And it's just a fun environment, fun games, and you also get to meet God and just live it up.
HSM has been a huge part of my life and will forever be a family to me.
I feel called to ministry, and I feel like I have such a great foundation for where I want to be in the future because of Timberlake and HSM.
All of my connections at Timberlake are really amazing, and I'm really excited to just come back and see everyone when I come and visit.
Cut!
What a fun season of life. Right? Transitioning from adolescence, teenage years now into their young adult years. And I was thinking, when I was this age, back in the 1980s, I spent a lot of time, as many of you did, in indoor malls walking around. Right? That was the big fun thing to do. And obviously, malls have become museums over the past couple of decades. But when I was growing up, they were the centers of entertainment, and in the 1980s, every mall had an arcade, right? You'll remember this, some of you. You walk in, and there's just arcades everywhere. There was Pac-Man and Galaga and Asteroids and Centipede and Dig Dug. I mean, these were the games. And if you were, for whatever reason, feeling it, you would walk away from some of the regular, most popular games over to the Whac-A-Mole game. Right? And Whac-A-Mole game, for the most part, was for kids. I just, come on. That wasn't, teenagers weren't playing this as much as kids were, but it's still a pretty fun game. And the whole idea is these moles, these plastic moles, start popping up. And your job is to take a mallet and then strike them down. Sometimes they pop up slow, other times fast, and then sometimes you have multiple popping up at the same time. So you basically put a quarter into this game, and for the next 60 seconds, take out all your angst on these moles. Well, a couple weeks ago, we launched a teaching series here at Timberlake called Whac-A-Mole. And we're talking about some of the destructive issues that keep popping up in life. Now, I feel like I should be down with the kids today with my toys, right? But we're talking about things that you don't necessarily see coming. You don't necessarily predict that, hey, they're going to be a part of my life, and yet they pop up, and your job is to somehow take a mallet and strike them down. This could be very distracting today, right? Here we go. Now think about this. Many of the issues that we have to strike down in life, many of the things that are destructive, the reason they're destructive is because they're not obvious, right? They pop up, and we don't foresee that they're going to be that big of an issue, so we kind of let them stay there. And the reason why is because when we start out in life, we're young and we're naive. So we're not thinking much about the future and what that's going to look like. And if we do, it's idealistic, right? We start out naive, and we know this because of some of the things we believe as children. Right? So when I was a kid, I thought, like many of you did, that if I would eat Pop Rocks and drink Coke, my stomach would explode. And we discovered that's not true because we did it. It's like, oh, I'm still alive, right? We had this belief that if we would swallow gum, it would stay in our system for how long? 7 years. Where that number comes from is unbelievable. Everybody has the same number. It's not 2 weeks, 6 years, right? Everybody knows it's 7 years. Or if you were to eat right before you go swimming, you're going to cramp up. It's going to be a bad ending if that happens. So we start out in life, and we're young, and we are naive. But like I said a moment ago, we're also idealistic. And where we're most idealistic is in our thinking about adults. Because as kids, unless you grew up in a crazy dysfunctional setting, all of us grew up in some sort of dysfunction. But unless it's a crazy dysfunctional setting, the belief as kids is that all adults, or pretty much most adults, are mature and they know how to handle their emotions. Right? That's what we think. We think that adults are great at making big decisions. And adults are really good at managing finances. And if something breaks, they know how to fix it. And they're always responsible. But then, of course, we become adults. And all of our friends are adults. And we realize that being a grown-up isn't what we imagined. We discovered that there's lots of things that seem to pop up in life that if we don't strike down, will lead to some sort of destruction in our life. And so week 1, Pastor Ben talked about the importance of striking down the emotions that have the power to creep into our heart when people let us down. And if we don't strike them down, we can grow bitter and jaded and angry and hateful. Last week, Jedi talked about how to strike down the things that pop up and want to keep us stuck in life. Things like painful memories and destructive lies and false narratives and harmful habits. And so today what I want to do is I want to talk about how, the things that we need to strike down that have the potential to be destructive influences in our life. Now, obviously, this could be like a summer series. There's so many things that have the potential to be destructive issues, but I want to talk about something that has disproportional impact, and that is the friendships in our life and the people who are closest to us. Right? When it comes to our friendships, we need to be very, very selective in who we choose to be part of our inner circle. Now, I hesitated talking about this today because, come on, this sounds like something your mom would have talked about to you when you were in like 2nd grade. Be careful who you hang out with. This isn't something that we feel like as adults we need to talk about, but this is why it's actually something we should deal with because it's subtle. And it's something that we don't really pay much attention to as adults because we think we've kind of risen above the power to be influenced. But yet, who we hang out with is a really, really big deal. And in our culture, when we talk about choosing or selecting someone to be in our life or in our inner circle, most of the time it is in the context of romantic relationships. Right? So we read a tabloid or a magazine article, or we think about the selection of movies or shows on Netflix, and we think about all the songs that are being released. There's a massive amount of content focused on romantic relationships. Who's sleeping with who, who's dating who, who's going to marry who. I mean, that is the reality. And it's always unrealistic, right? If you ever watch The Bachelor, here's this guy surrounded by 20-some beautiful women, and he's going on all these special dates because he's going to select, he's going to choose who he's going to be with, right? And what happens? They get in a helicopter, they fly to some romantic island, and it's remote, and it's a candlelight dinner, and U2 is playing a special concert for them. I could fall in love with my sister in that kind of environment. Let's just be honest. There's so many emotions. So when it comes to relationships in our inner circle, almost all the time it's romantic, romantic, romantic. Very little content is being written about friendships. But this is super important to talk about because during our adolescent years, it is our parents who shape most of who we are and who we become. After we leave our parents' home, it is our friends, for the most part, that shape us and determine who we are and where we end up in life. So put another way, and I'm sure you've heard this said in different settings and in different ways, our friends determine our future. Our friends influence where we're headed in life. Our friends shape our values way more than we want to acknowledge. Our friends cultivate our worldview. Our friends determine the quality of our life. So I'm going to say it again. We need, even as adults, to choose our friends carefully. Sociologists tell us that the average person has anywhere between 500 and 2,500 social interactions every single year. And as you can imagine, introverts tend to be on the low end of the scale. Extroverts tend to be on the high end. So if you are a flight attendant Or you come from an Italian family, you're obviously going to be on the high end, right? Off the charts. Others of you, you're off the charts in the other direction, right? You never leave your house, you DoorDash for every meal, and the only reason you're part of Timberlake Church is because you can watch online. And that's your life. You're just like, I don't like talking to people, and I wish the pandemic would have lasted forever. But generally speaking, we all have a lot of relationships that we have to manage. And so it would be wise, even though we're grown up, even though we're adults, it would be wise for us to pause every so often to consider who we're spending time with, because our friends determine our future. King Solomon explains it this way: he who walks with the wise become wise. Walk with the wise and become wise. He says, for a companion of fools suffers harm. Now, this is super important. Walk with the wise and become wise. The implication is if you walk and you surround yourself with wise people, almost automatically, with very little effort, with very little intentionality, it's very likely you're going to become wise as well. Now, wisdom is different than knowledge. I think most of us understand that, right? Knowledge is I have a bunch of information in my head. Wisdom is knowing how to apply it. And in the context of Solomon's writings, when he talked about wise people, he's talking about people who make decisions today with tomorrow in mind. He's thinking, they're people who think about the future when they make decisions. Fools, on the other end, are people who live for the moment, right? They get caught up right now, right today. So Solomon says, if you hang out with people who are making choices today with tomorrow in mind, the likelihood of you living your life a similar way is pretty high. But then he said the companion of fools suffers harm. Now this is crazy. He didn't say walk with the wise, become wise, walk with the fools, become a fool. He says you walk with the fools, he says just so you know the companion of fools is going to suffer harm. In other words, if you surround yourself with, or you walk with, or you live with foolish people, if you do life with people who behave as if all their decisions are made in a bubble, and that the decisions they make have no impact or no effect on their life tomorrow, it's just what's happening today. He said the greater odds are that you're going to suffer harm. When their life goes bad, your life goes bad. It's a proximity thing. The closer you are to them, the greater odds of something bad happening to you. He says because you get caught up in it. Even if you're not making the decision, right? You get caught up in the moment. And we've all had those moments. Come on. We've been on that end where we have been the fool. We're not thinking about tomorrow. We're just living for the moment. A few weeks ago, I got a call from my son. His phone number popped up, and so I answered it, Domino's Pizza. And he's on the other end, I heard, excuse me, this is Officer so-and-so. And of course, I don't know what's going on. My heart sinks. He says, I'm sorry to tell you, I pulled your son over because he was reckless driving all over this shopping area. And he said, it was completely irresponsible. He said, I'm just being honest with you. The reason I'm calling you is I was that scared. I said, you sure you're not talking about my wife? Did he pull her over? No, I said, okay, tell me what's happening. And he just said, hey, that's pretty much the story. He said he's been very respectful in this interaction, but there's going to be, some sort of consequence here. And so my son comes home and he's dejected. And I appreciate it. He didn't have a bunch of excuses. He didn't point fingers. He said, Dad, I just got caught up in the moment. He said, my friends were all in the car and we were having fun. And I was just showing them how fast the car could go in a parking lot, really. And here's the thing. We've all done that, right? We get caught up in the moment. But he says, man, if you hang out with fools for too long, eventually their decisions are going to impact you. It's why Solomon, in his book Proverbs, writes this. He says, the righteous choose their friends carefully. Now, Solomon isn't talking about, in one moment you get caught up and you're with your friends and you do something dumb. Everybody has stories like this. He's talking about the friends that we go long distance with. He says a righteous person, that's a person of character, right? He writes, a person of character is going to be selective in who they hang out with. They choose their friends wisely. He's not even talking about every person we could label as a friend, right? We got coworkers and peers and acquaintances. He's talking about those closest to us, those we spend the most time with. And the reason why is because those we spend the most time with, those we would say, those are our closest friends. Those are the people we let our guard down with. And they're naturally, inevitably going to affect our attitude and our thinking. They're over time going to impact our worldview, our behavior. They're going to impact the conversations that get most of our attention. And there have been all types of studies, there have been all types of research on this, and research points to this over and over and over, that the people we surround ourselves with, those closest to us, have the potential to impact where we end up in life up to 95% of where we end up. Now, it might be 50% for you, it might be 75%, but that our friends will determine as much as 95% of where we end up in life. Our friends determine our future. The future of our relationships, the future of our marriage, the future of our friendships, the future of our parenting, the future of our faith. Because we're surrounding ourselves, we're walking with them. Walk with the wise, become wise. Walk with the fools, you will suffer harm. Solomon encourages us in our friendships. He says, let your eyes look straight ahead. Fix your gaze directly before you. Give careful thought to the paths for your feet and be steadfast in all your ways. Do not turn to the right or to the left. Keep your foot from evil. There are lots of different paths that you and I can take in life. We need to know where we're headed. We need to know where we're going in our faith. We need to know where we're going in our marriage. We need to know where we're going in our character. We need to know who we want to be in our career. Right? Not just what we want to do, but the kind of person we want to be. We need to know it. And he says, if you know where you want to be, just keep focused on that direction. Don't get distracted. Usually we get distracted when we don't know who we want to be. But where do we get distracted? Often it's in the people we surround ourselves with. Because we might have an idea of where we're going, and then we just start compromising a little here or a little here, and we just start going off in another path. Bottom line, we cannot be carefree with who we are spending the bulk of our time with. We have to be discerning. Okay, we can't think like we did as kids anymore. We can't be naive when it comes to friendships. People who are naive, they just sort of trust everyone around them. They're an open book. They give time and attention to anyone who wants it. That's just being naive. And what happens is naive people, over time, find themselves getting hurt a lot because they have such a big heart and they just open themselves up to too many people. They trust too many people. We can't be naive. At the other end of the spectrum, we can't be paranoid about friendships, right? Paranoid people are just fearful and suspicious of other people all the time. You know, they just have this dream of just getting a home out in the country, living off the grid, waiting for Armageddon, right? Hi to our friends in Wenatchee. And here's the deal. We don't have to be naive or paranoid when it comes to our friendships. But we do need, even as adults, to be discerning. Discerning people are selective in who they hang out with. And discerning people treat different people differently based on different factors. Now, before I say anything else, I want to be very clear about this. Everyone is equal in the sight of God. Everyone has equal worth. Everyone has equal value. But not everybody is equally safe. And not everybody is equally wise, and not everybody is equally helpful, and not everybody is equally life-giving. So discerning people treat different people differently. And people get to determine how we treat them. So we don't have to have this tension of like, oh, how do I make this? People get to determine how we treat them based on how they behave. And throughout the book of Proverbs, King Solomon of Israel writes that there are different types of people, and it gives us wisdom on how to treat them and interact with them. And one of the groups of people that Solomon writes about is wise people. And when it comes to wise people, Solomon advises us, invest our time with those who are wise. Who are wise people? They're people who live today with tomorrow in mind. When it comes to finances, they're thinking about the future. When it comes to their friendships, they're thinking about the future. When it comes to where they're headed in their career, they're thinking about the future. And they're making decisions now, even if they're difficult decisions, even if they're uncomfortable decisions, they're making decisions now as they move towards the future. Now, when it comes to wise people, often we need to pursue them. We need to initiate. We need to go after. Years ago, I started reading a book, maybe a decade ago, started reading books by an author out of San Diego. His name's Larry. And the books were just filled, in my opinion, with all types of wisdom of like kind of where I wanted to end up in life. And as I would read stories of his, I'm like, man, I want to be that kind of parent. And I want to be that kind of pastor. And I want to be that kind of leader. And so I was doing a trip to San Diego, and I just said, hey, why not go for it? And I sent his assistant an email, did some work tracking it down, and I said, if Larry would be so kind, I would like to spend 15, 30 minutes with him in San Diego. I'll meet him wherever he wants. I'll come to the offices. I'll do whatever. And I was shocked. Larry emailed me back personally and said, absolutely, I'd love to spend some time with you. And over the years, I've just kept pursuing that with Larry. Anytime I'm in San Diego, I've got a cell phone number now, and I'll text him questions every so often. But I had to go after that. And the reason I went after it is because I said, I want his life. I want to be me, but what I see in him and just the wisdom that exudes from him and the results of his life, I just want that. Wise people are fun to be around because they're humble, they're teachable. King Solomon writes this about the wise. He says, instruct the wise, and they will be wiser still. Teach the righteous, and they will add to their learning. Instruct the wise, they're going to be wiser still. A wise person is always wanting to grow. They embrace reality. Right? It's easy to ignore reality. It's easy to see things and just downplay them. See things with our kids, see things with this group of people, and just kind of, it's not that big of a deal. But wise people pay attention, and they embrace reality, right? So if your wife is crying all the time, and she's mysteriously quiet, and she's always cleaning her gun, looking at you from different angles, right? Things aren't going well. But a wise person's marked by words like humble and teachable and responsible. They're always seeking to learn and grow and understand. They welcome feedback and instruction. And usually with wise people, they don't just latch themselves onto us naturally. We have to seek them out and walk alongside them. Another group of people that Solomon writes about is the fool, right? When it comes to foolish people, he advises us, limit our time with those who are fools. And I'm aware that fool sounds really, really harsh, but it's not meant to be. Again, fool is just someone who lives for them in the moment. They get caught up in the emotion and the drama of what's happening right now. They're not thinking about the future. And to say limit our time with them, we're not being judgmental. There's a big difference between being judgmental and having good judgment. Right? I'm judgmental when I'm elevating myself above you. I'm thinking of you as worse because of decisions you've made. I think you have less value. God loves you less. That's not what this is about. This is about just using good judgment. It's saying, I know where I want to go in life. I just want to surround myself with people moving in a similar direction. They don't have to share my faith to the core of who I am, but they certainly can't be people who are chiseling away and working against my faith. Right? They don't have to believe everything I believe, have the same worldview, vote the same way, but they do have to be supportive of me and encourage me and surround me with love as I move in whatever direction I'm choosing to move in. But of course, a fool doesn't think much about where they personally want to go in life, and so we have to limit our time with them. Solomon warns us, a companion of fools will end up suffering harm. Now, a fool is not someone who necessarily lacks intellect, right? They can be super, super knowledgeable, but they do lack the humility to learn and to grow. Solomon writes this. He says a lot of great things about wise people, but then he writes, but fools despise wisdom and instruction. When you're dealing with a fool, all they want to do is argue. And it doesn't matter what you post on social media, a fool always wants to debate. When someone's foolish, you can't teach them everything. They know everything. They always have an excuse. I had a guy I was starting to spend more and more time with, and I realized that every time we would hang out, somehow there would be this debate. There would be this other angle, was always playing the devil's advocate, and it was just kind of working against me. And so I just started slowly stepping away. It wasn't like, I got to cut you out of my life. Bye-bye. Right? I wasn't weird about it. I just found more and more reasons to be busy. I wish we could, just not going to happen. But with fools, we just have to limit it. It wasn't like I stopped completely spending time with them. I just started limiting my time. Fools don't want wisdom. They don't like discipline. They don't like order or responsibility. They don't like habits. Right? They're always looking for a shortcut, a get-rich-quick scheme. That's the mark of foolishness. And the primary way that foolish people learn is painful circumstances. A wise person, most of the time, is going to learn through the mistake of others. A fool always learns through their own mistakes. They don't learn about money until they've lost all their money. Right? Because they're not asking questions. They're not seeking to learn. They don't go call a marriage counselor until their spouse has left them. Right? They don't read a parenting book until they've seen their kid on Dateline. Now, to be fair, we've all had these times in our life where we've been the fool. Come on. We've all been the fool, so this is not a self-righteous thing. But what Solomon is talking about is those who are habitually making foolish decisions. Those who've just made it a pattern in their life. A fool is marked by words like proud and unteachable and selfish and irresponsible. A fool doesn't ever want to change. They want everyone else to change. A fool rejects feedback and correction. So we have to limit our time with those who are fools. Now, that's hard to do. You want to know why? Because fools are fun to hang out with. They are. They're a good time, right? They're not thinking about responsibility. They're not thinking about cost. They're not thinking about consequences. The thing about foolish people is we have fun around them, but we don't respect them. We wouldn't hire them. We wouldn't marry them. We wouldn't let them marry our kids. We wouldn't ask them for advice. But they are fun. They're fun, but they're irresponsible. And what they are looking for in their life is a responsible person to come into their life so they can dump all of their irresponsibility onto someone else's life. And I hope I don't sound cruel. I really don't want to, because I know we're all over the map with some of this. But I've met a lot of good kids who've evolved into fools because they've had family. Maybe it's a sibling, maybe it's a parent, maybe it's a grandparent who just enabled them and enabled their behavior, right? It's like they're in their 30s. It's like, Mom, can you pay my bills? Can you do my laundry? Can I drive your car? Can I live in your house? Can you cut the crust off my peanut butter jelly sandwich? Mom, help, right? And if you have an adult child living in your house, man, and they refuse to get wise, they refuse to do much of their life, and they're just kind of wasting away, and you're tired of it, man, just go in their room, unplug their computer, unplug their video game, taser them, drag their body outside. It's not going to kill them. Just say it's time to go, right? Now, on the flip side, I realize that there are some parents or some children who have irresponsible parents and foolish parents. And it's hard to put up boundaries with parents, but sometimes we have to do this. We just have to limit our time. And I'm going to say it again. We don't have to say, I am limiting my time with you because of what you say. Because of what we don't have to be. We just naturally we keep ourselves busy. We put up boundaries because we know where we are headed in life. Now, final group that Solomon writes about is a group of individuals he refers to as evil people. Right? When it comes to evil people, we have to protect our time from those who are evil. Now, I have to be very clear that I help you understand the difference between the fool and the evil person, because these are not the same person, right? Foolish people inadvertently cause you problems. It's because they're not thinking about the future. You're dealing with the fallout of their decisions. Evil people intentionally cause you problems. Evil people are the ones who like to cause you pain and hurt. Often it's because they're in pain or they hurt, right? Hurting people hurt people, right? But they like for you to suffer. And they're very scary people to be around. They're dangerous. So we have to learn to put up strict boundaries with them. Right? And I know some of you have family, you have extended family who might fall into this category, and that becomes an incredibly difficult and challenging thing to navigate. Like, how do I put up boundaries with this person who every time they're around me just makes it a point in their life to just put me down and make me feel like nothing? And so I want to recognize that this is not easy. But here's what Solomon writes about being wise and dealing with evil people. Wisdom, thinking about the future and where you're headed, right, will save you from the ways of wicked men, from men whose words are perverse, who have left the straight paths to walk in dark ways, who delight in doing wrong and rejoice in the perverseness of evil, whose paths are crooked and who are devious in their ways. And those are very powerful descriptions, right? These are evil and dark and twisted and wrong and crooked. But here's where we have to caution ourselves. Often when we see somebody like this, somebody who walks through life just angry at the world, wanting to hurt people, we approach them more like we would approach a fool. And we say, well, I'll be careful and not spending too much time with them. But we approach them as though we're going to be the hero and we're going to be the ones who can rescue them and save them from what's happening to them. And where we see it the most is romantic relationships, right? Someone sees a person who's drowning in not just irresponsibility, but in destructive life decisions they make, and they think, oh, I'm going to date this person, and I'm going to pull this person out of the water, but they don't want to be pulled out of the water. They want to keep doing whatever they're doing. They want to pull you in with them. An evil person is going to be marked by words like dangerous and entitled and threatening and bitter and selfish and hurtful. These are the people we have to stay away from. And what we do in our culture every so often is you see how certain people will gravitate towards certain people. So sometimes someone will want to rescue them. Another person who gets attracted to evil person is another evil person. Sometimes you see these get together. It's like Bonnie and Clyde, right? These are business partners who are just ruthless on everybody. This is a married couple who they're out against the world. The only kind of relationship we should have with an evil person is a professional relationship. Sorry, you're going to have to talk to my attorney. Right? You're going to have to meet with a therapist. I'm sorry, you're going to have to talk to a professional. No, you cannot have my number. No, you cannot have my daughter's number. No, you cannot date them. Nope, you can't marry them. And I want to be very clear. Evil people are not beyond help. They're just beyond our help. They need God and a professional who can help them. Do not lie to yourself and think you can help an evil person because you cannot. So Solomon writes about three kinds of people: the wise, the fool, and the evil person. And every one of us, if we want to be wise, if we want to think about the future, we need to pause from time to time and evaluate those who are in our closest circle, those we're spending the most time with. Because those are the people we let our guard down with. And we think, well, I'm an adult, it's not going to impact me. Right? Even as adults, we're naive. Because we could say, well, with kids, what they listen to, what they watch, who they surround themselves with, man, they get influenced by that stuff. So we're going to, you can't watch that. You can't listen to that kind of music. Come on, I don't want that influence. But we think as adults we're above that. No, we're not. No, we're not. And there's all kinds of friendships that exist. Right? We got coworkers and casual friendships and online friendships and long-distance friendships and those we go golfing with or those we hike with, recreational, activity-based friendship. I mean, the list is endless. And here's the deal. If we're not careful, there are going to be things in those friendships that just start popping up. And because we're adults, we think, it's not that big of a deal. I'm bigger than that. But over time, if we're not striking them down, right, if we're not just constantly working against it, we will find ourselves being influenced in ways that lead to destruction. Destruction of our faith, destruction of our marriage, destruction of a career, destruction of a parenting relationship. The dynamic of our friendships is a big deal. And if you care about your future, if you care about where you're headed in your faith, and if you care about where you're headed in your career, and you care about where you're headed in your character, right? It's so easy to get caught up in what we want to do in life rather than who we want to become. But if you care about that stuff, then you have to pursue healthy relationships. And you have to pursue wise people. And you have to pursue life-giving friendships, beneficial friendships, where we're growing and learning and maturing and moving towards a better life. We cannot afford to be passive. So wise, foolish, evil. Take inventory of those in your closest circle of friends. Who do you need to just start distancing yourself from? And who do you maybe need to go after and say, man, I want that person in my life? I've been open about this. With Pastor Ben, I have done that for, almost 20 years now. Gone after him. I want him in my life. Why? King Solomon writes this: as iron sharpens iron, so a friend sharpens a friend. Are the friends in your life sharpening you? Guys, many of my friends do not share my faith. I'll just be honest about that, right? Many of my friends don't share my faith, but my closest friends do. And I'm not even saying it's a sin if your closest friends do not share your faith. As long as they're not working against your faith and chiseling away at it, but my closest friends do. It's because I know who I want to be. I know where I want to go. And I know how easy it is, even at my age, and being a pastor, I know it's so easy to get off the right path and be distracted. Jesus spent time with lots of different people, but wait, man, he was very intentional on the 12 guys he spent the most time with. Those were his disciples. And even of his disciples, he was very intentional and said, hey, these three, Peter, James, and John, these are the ones I'm going to spend the vast majority of my time with. I want my closest friends to be people who are going to pray for me, encourage me, and also I want them to be people who call me out when something doesn't reflect the ways of Jesus. Now, I'm human. So guess what? When someone hurts me, I definitely want a friend who's going to help me hide the body. But that's not what I need. What I need is a friend who will remind me, Dave, there's always more to the story. You've hurt people throughout your life, and you need to go down the path of forgiveness. That's what I really need. When I've heard something embarrassing about someone else, I want friends that I can laugh with and make fun of this person with and put them down. But what I really need is a friend who's going to call me out, stop me in my gossip, and say, Dave, you've done dumb things too, and put everything back into perspective. When I'm compromising on my character in some way, it feels good to have friends who will laugh with me and ignore my behavior. But what I really need is a friend who says, Dave, this is difficult, but I need to call you out. That's not reflecting Jesus. Those kind of friendships don't happen accidentally. It's constantly evaluating, constantly working on ourselves, working on our friendships. So here's a picture. You've seen this before, the Golden Gate Bridge. 1.7 miles long, painted with a color known as vermilion orange. And what almost nobody even thinks about when they see the bridge or drive across it, like I have on multiple occasions, what almost nobody thinks about is all the maintenance that something like this requires in order to keep it safe and good looking. Right? You might think a bridge like this needs to be painted annually or every couple of years, but in reality, the Golden Gate Bridge is constantly being painted. In fact, there's a team of almost 30 people who you never see or notice, but they're always painting the bridge. They're always working on the bridge. They're always doing maintenance on the bridge. And the reason why is because there's such high salt content in the air, and there's a lot of water, of course, around the bridge, that inevitably there's going to be rust and corrosion. And if there's a part of the bridge that's unsealed with paint, it begins to corrode the steel, which, of course, over time can lead to structural damage and ultimately can lead to disaster. And so there are always people painting the bridge. Nobody notices. Nobody applauds. Nobody says thank you. It's just a monotonous routine. And often that's what it feels like when we're trying to take care of our hearts and we're trying to protect our character as we keep moving towards the future. Right? We have to work on ourselves and know where we're headed day after day after day, week after week after week, month after month. Nobody's cheering us on. Nobody's saying, way to go. That's a wise decision. Nope. We just have to be committed to it. And that's how it feels like when we're evaluating and selecting and going after friends and trying to cut back on certain relationships that we've realized, hey, this isn't healthy for me. Nobody's cheering us on. It's just monotonous day after day, week after week, month after month. But we just know if we're not careful, rust and corrosion gets into our life. It impacts our worldview. It impacts our beliefs. It impacts our faith. It impacts our values. We cannot stop paying attention to who we're surrounding ourselves with. Because life has shown us that eventually it can lead us to making decisions that lead to disaster. And at that point, our life starts to fall apart. I'll leave you with this. I've talked about this pretty openly at Timberlake, that back in 2017, I went through what could only be described as a year from hell. And it impacted my marriage in a way that had never impacted my marriage before. And I got a call on my birthday from one of my good friends who I had not opened up with where my marriage was at. I was just holding it very close to the chest. And I answered it thinking they were going to wish me a happy birthday. So I said, "What's up, man?" They live in a different part of the country. And they said, "Hey, Dave, I just want to call you because your wife reached out to me about your marriage." And my heart sunk. And I started getting very, very defensive. And I said, well, what you don't understand is I'm doing my best. Right now, I've got a daughter who's living, across the country. She's getting help for mental health. I said, I'm dealing with so many things at the church right now. We've moved multiple times this year. We're down hundreds of people. And I start getting into all these excuses, and I'm just getting so passionate and so worked up. And he sensed that. He goes, hold on. I didn't call you to berate you, Dave. If I was dealing with what you're dealing with, there's no doubt my marriage would be in a difficult place too. I'm calling you to ask how I can pray for you and love you and support you and encourage you in this season. And I don't get usually that emotional, but I started getting really emotional. I said, I apologize. It's just been overwhelming. I'm going to tell you, those are the friends I need in my life, and those are the kind of friends you need. What's your future? Do you have friends that you're surrounding yourself with that in the darkest moments, they're going to come around you and not berate you, not look at you and point out all the wrong that you're doing, but say, we're here to encourage you and pray for you. And we're also going to be the ones to say, you need to go get help, which he did. May God give us the wisdom on how to do this. Let me pray. Heavenly Father, we thank you so much for putting us into this world and not having us just live lives of isolation, but surrounding us with other people in community. And so we just need wisdom on how to best surround ourselves with the people who are going to help us move into the future you have for us and the future we desire. The future that's life-giving, the future that's filled with very few regrets, the future that's allowing us to be a blessing instead of a burden to others. Lord, give us the wisdom to know who we can best surround ourselves with in every season of our life, and then the courage to do it. In Jesus' name, amen.
Thanks for watching. But before you go, please be sure to bookmark this page so that you can find us again next week. And are you looking for a way to get engaged and join a team? The online chat engagement team is a role that anyone and everyone can do, and it's simple. Engage with people, create an environment where people are free to be themselves, and more importantly, open to receive the truth of Jesus. And if you're interested in joining this team and becoming part of what God is doing through Timberlake Online, please let me know on your connection card. Links can be found in chat, and I'll see you here next week at online.timberlakechurch.com.